welcome back to the second stream of the evening. All right. Just get my pillows, so I'm a little more comfy here. All right. So today we are starting this evening. This evening we are starting our second book of the Bedtime Stories series. I need a blankie, but Daddy's on my blankie back there. Look who stole my blanket. Stole my blanket. Stratty stole my blankie. Naughty boy. He's on my blankie. I can't take my blankie because he's on it. Stratty stole my blanket. What'd you do? He stole my blanket. Alright, we're gonna go get another blanket because Stratty stole mine. He's very cute though. Stratty, you can keep my blanket. You can keep it because you're sweet. Stratus loves bedtime story time. Stratus always comes and sits with us for story time. Okay, so this is the book we're going to be reading. It's called Julie of the Wolves by Jean Craighead George. So here, I don't know, sometimes it's easier to do that way. So this is the book. Jean Craighead George, Julie of the Wolves. It's a winner of the Newbery Medal. And it was written, I was just looking up how to pronounce one of the words in this book. I think in the 70s. Pictures by John Schoener, and it was written in 1972. Dedicated to Luke George, who loves wolves and the Eskimos of Alaska. So I'm just going to run and get a blankie so you guys can watch the book and the cat. You guys watch the kitty for a second. I'm just waiting for a few more people to come in. A nice quilt. And let me shut my door over here so that it's quiet. Man, the problem is I start getting tired this time of night, and then I start yawning. That pillow behind me. I just need a pillow to prop up my hip. Okay. Hi, Ann Mudd. How are you? Okay. I just wanted a blankie to put over my lap. My nice quilt. Okay. So yeah, I was just waiting for a few people to come in, but hi, Animal Lover. Yeah, good night, honey. I was going to time you out for the stream anyway, so, but feel free to listen to the story in bed if you'd like. But otherwise, have a nice night. Love you, honey. Anyway, yeah, let me just time her out because we were talking before. I told her, I didn't mean to hide her, but hold on. I wanted to time out, not hide. Time out, just time out. Jesus. Oops, sorry about that. It popped off the tripod. That was scary. Scary. Okay. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Ann Mudd. Hi, James. Hi, Zentangle. All right. So we are going to, I think enough people are here. Oh, day's been going good. We did a previous. Oh, well, actually, day's been going exhausted. Watch the previous live stream that I did an hour or so ago to catch up on the day. But today is just going to be tonight is just going to be a reading stream. So this is the book we are reading tonight. It's called Julie of the Wolves. And I read the back of it previously, but I will read the back for those of you who didn't hear it on the previous stream. So the book says, like the jacket, this is like the summary or whatever, the hook into the book. Mayax rebels against a home situation she finds intolerable. She runs away towards San Francisco, towards her pen pal who calls her Julie. But soon Mayax is lost in the Alaskan wilderness, without food, without even a compass. Slowly she is accepted by a pack of Arctic wolves, and she comes to love them as if they were her brothers. With their help, and drawing on her father's training, she struggles day by day to survive. In the process, she is forced to rethink her past and to define for herself the traditional riches of Eskimo life, intelligence, fearlessness, and love. Oh, so it's a really good book. This was one of my favorite. Like, I reread and reread. This is the same copy I had since I was a kid. This one isn't, because I lost this one and the sequel. I think this one I lost once when I was coming home from school in like 6th or 7th grade, and it fell out of my backpack or something. So I had to rebuy this one, and then I'm still missing the sequel after that. There's a third in the series that I'm still missing. So, hi, Country Living. How are you? Welcome in. Thanks for coming. Oh, trying to get all my yawns out before I start reading. So, yeah, I'm still missing the third in the series, but I'm hoping to get it so we can read it. But that's the second. So at least we have the first and the second one. Yeah, me too. Busy evening, busy day for me. So, let's see. I guess we can start. Are we all ready to start? Ready, okay. So here's some of the pictures. Julie of the Wolves, and that's her on the open tundra. I have my computer in front of me because there's a lot of like Inuit. This takes place in Alaska, and there's a lot of Inuit and Eskimo words, so some of them I don't know how to pronounce. So I looked up a couple of them before I started, but I just read it how I read it when I was a kid, but I'm like trying to at least pronounce it somewhat correctly as an adult. So I might pause to look things up if I'm not quite sure how to spell things, but so part 1, it's set in like parts. So there's like part 1, part 2, part 3. So part 1 is called Amarok. Oh, where is it? Amarok the Wolf. Actually, you kind of have to to read it, you have to do this. Amarok the Wolf. And there's Julie on the tundra and a wolf pack in the distance. Mayax pushed back the hood of her sealskin parka and looked at the Arctic sun. It was a yellow disk in a lime green sky, the colors of 6 o'clock in the evening and the time when the wolves awoke. Quietly, she put down her cooking pot and crept to the top of a dome-shaped frost heave, one of the many earth buckles that rise and fall in the crackling cold of the Arctic winter. Lying on her stomach, she looked across a vast lawn of grass and moss and focused her attention on the wolves she had come upon 2 sleeps ago. They were wagging their tails as they awoke and saw each other. Her hands trembled and her heartbeat quickened, for she was frightened, not so much of the wolves, who were shy and many harpoon shots away, but because of her desperate predicament. Mayax was lost. She had been without food for many sleeps on the north slope of Alaska. The barren slope stretches for 300 miles from the Brooks Range to the Arctic Ocean, and for more than 800 miles from the Chukchi to Beaufort Sea. You know, it's actually interesting. The Chukchi is where Siberian Huskies were from. Chukchis, the Chukchi people were initially, that's like the name Husky was initially Chukchi, and then it like became translated over time from Chukchi to Husky. So just there's a little bit of info here. So that's where the Siberian Huskies came from. Oh. Oh, okay. And for more than 800 miles from the Chukchi to the Beaufort Sea. No roads cross it. Ponds and lakes freckle its immensity. Winds scream across it, and the view in every direction is exactly the same. Somewhere in this cosmos was Mayax. And the very life in her body, its spark and warmth depended upon these wolves for survival, and she was not sure that they would help. Mayax stared hard at the regal black wolf, hoping to catch his eye. She must somehow tell him that she was starving and ask him for food. This could be done, she knew, for her father, an Eskimo hunter, had done so. One year he had camped near a wolf den while on a hunt. When a month had passed and her father had seen no game, he told the leader of the wolves that he was hungry and needed food. The next night the wolf called him from far away, and her father went to him and found a freshly killed caribou. Unfortunately, Mayax's father never explained to her how he had told the wolf of his needs, and not long afterwards he paddled his kayak into the Bering Sea to hunt for seal, and he never returned. Sorry, just doing a sniffle over there. She had been watching the wolves for 2 days, trying to discern which of their sounds and movements expressed goodwill and friendship. Most animals had such signals. The little Arctic ground squirrels flicked their tails sideways to notify others of their kind that they were friendly. By imitating this signal with her forefinger, Mayax had lured many a squirrel to her hand. If she could discover such a gesture for the wolves, she would be able to make friends with them and share their food, like a bird or a fox. Propped on her elbows with her chin in her fists, she stared at the black wolf, trying to catch his eye. She had chosen him because he was much larger than the others, and because he walked like her father Kapugin, with his head held high and his chest out. Oh, hi, Butterfly. Oh, you might be on baby watch. Oh my God! Congratulations. Well, you can listen to the story while you wait for baby. And then we can read the story to the new baby. We can read story to new baby. Well, we're only a few pages in, so I hope you didn't miss too much. Oh, sorry, my throat's like still a little tense. 1 sec. Yeah, we're only a few pages in. Mayax, who is Julie, that's her Eskimo name is Mayax, her American name is Julie. She's basically lost in the northern slope of Alaska and trying to talk to the wolves to get them to give her food. The black wolf, hold on. Propped on her elbows with her chin in her fists, she stared at the black wolf, trying to catch his eye. She had chosen him because he was much larger than the others, and because he walked like her father Kapugin, with his head held high and his chest out. The black wolf also possessed wisdom, she had observed. The pack looked to him when the wind carried strange scents or the birds cried nervously. If he was alarmed, they were alarmed. If he was calm, they were calm. Long minutes passed, and the black wolf did not look at her. He had ignored her since she first came upon them 2 sleeps ago. True, she moved slowly and quietly so as not to alarm him. Yet she did wish he would see the kindness in her eyes. Many animals could tell the difference between hostile hunters and friendly people by merely looking at them. But the big black wolf would not even glance her way. A bird stretched in the grass. The wolf looked at it. A flower twisted in the wind. He glanced at that. Then the breeze rippled the wolverine ruff on Mayax's parka, and it glistened. Then the breeze rippled the wolverine ruff on Mayax's parka, and it glistened in the light. He did not look at that. She waited. Patience with the ways of nature had been instilled in her by her father, and so she knew better than to move or shout. Yet she must get food or die. Her hands shook slightly, and she swallowed hard to keep calm. Mayax was a classic Eskimo beauty, small of bone and delicately wired with strong muscles. Her face was pearl round and her nose was flat. Her black eyes, which slanted gracefully, were moist and sparkling. Like the beautifully formed polar bears and the foxes of the north, she was slightly short-limbed. The frigid environment of the Arctic had sculptured life into compact shapes. Unlike the long-limbed, long-bodied animals of the south that are cooled by dispensing heat on extended surfaces, all live things in the Arctic tend towards compactness to conserve heat. The length of her limbs and the beauty of her face were of no use to Mayax as she lay on the lichen-speckled frost heap in the midst of the bleak tundra. Her stomach ached, and the royal black wolf was carefully ignoring her. Amarok, Aleya, wolf, my friend, she finally called. Look at me. Look at me. Oh, thank you, horse girl. Thank you for the laughing disco. And hi, Zaylin. How are you? Sorry, I don't talk too much when I'm reading because I want people to be able to watch the stream back later, almost like an ebook type of thing. So I try not to interact with the chat too much. But thank you guys. When someone does gift, I do want to say thank you. This, thank you. Okay. So, Amarok, Aleya, wolf, my friend, she finally called. Look at me. Look at me. She spoke half in Eskimo and half in English, as if the instincts of her father and the science of the Gusiks, the white-faced, might evolve some magical combination that would help her get her message through to the wolf. Amarok glanced at his paw and slowly turned his head her way without lifting his eyes. He licked his shoulder. A few matted hairs sprang apart and twinkled individually. Then his eyes sped to each of the 3 adult wolves that made up his pack, and finally to the 5 pups who were sleeping in a fuzzy mass near the den entrance. The great wolf's eyes softened at the sight of the little wolves, then quickly hardened into brittle yellow jewels as he scanned the flat tundra. Not a tree grew anywhere to break the monotony of the gold-green plain, for the soils of the tundra are permanently frozen. Only moss, grass, lichens, and a few hardy flowers take root in the thin upper layer that thaws briefly in the summer. Nor do many species of animals live in this rigorous land, but those creatures that do dwell here exist in bountiful numbers. Amarok watched a large cloud of Lapland longspurs wheel up into the sky, then alight in the grasses. Swarms of crane flies, one of the few insects that can survive the cold, darkened the tips of the mosses. Birds wheeled, turned, and called. Thousands sprang up from the ground like leaves in a wind. The wolf's ears cupped forward and tuned in on some distant message from the tundra. Mayax tensed and listened too. Did he hear some brewing storm? Some approaching enemy? Apparently not. His ears relaxed and he rolled to his side. She sighed, glanced up at the vaulting sky, and was painfully aware of her predicament. Here she was, watching wolves. She, Mayax, daughter of Kapugan, adopted child of Martha, citizen of the United States, pupil at the Bureau of Indian Affairs School in Barrow, Alaska, and 13-year-old wife of the boy Daniel. She shivered at the thought of Daniel. for it was he who had driven her to this fate. She had run away from him exactly 7 sleeps ago, and because of this she had one more title by Gussick standards, the child divorcee. Oh, baby. MJ said, would love to hear you read Black Beauty and the Jungle Book. Yeah, I have Black Beauty. I'm definitely going to read that one. The Jungle Book I still have to get. I don't have that one yet. But we're going to get that one and Bambi. And Butterfly, I'm so glad and happy for you with your new grandson coming. Alright, let's see. Let's go back to the book. Alright, child divorcee. The wolf rolled to his belly. Amarok, she whispered. I am lost, and the sun will not set for a month. There is no north star to guide me. Amarok did not stir, and there are no berry bushes here to bend under the polar wind and point to the south, nor are there any birds I can follow. She looked up. Here the birds are buntings and longspurs. They do not fly to the sea twice a day like the puffins and sandpipers that my father followed. The wolf groomed his chest with his tongue. I never dreamed I could get lost, Amarok, she went on, talking out loud to ease her fear. At home on Nunavut Island, where I was born, the plants and the birds pointed the way for wanderers. I thought they did so everywhere, and so, great black Amarok, I'm without a compass. It had been a frightening moment when, 2 days ago, she realized that the tundra was an ocean of grass on which she was circling around and around. Now, as that fear overcame her again, she closed her eyes. When she opened them, her heart skipped excitedly. Amarok was looking at her. Eli, she called and scrambled to her feet. The wolf arched his neck and narrowed his eyes. He pressed his ears forward. She waved. He drew back his lips and showed her teeth. Frightened by what seemed a snarl, she lay down again. When she was flat on her stomach, Amarok flattened his ears and wagged his tail once. Then he tossed his head and looked away. Discouraged, she wriggled backward down the frost heave and arrived at her camp feet first. The heave was between herself and the wolf pack, and so she relaxed, stood up, and took stock of her home. It was a simple affair, for she had not been able to carry much when she ran away. She took just those things she would need for the journey: a backpack, food for a week or so, needles to mend clothes, matches, her sleeping skin, and ground cloth to go under it, 2 knives and a pot. She had intended to walk to Point Hope. There she would meet the North Star, the ship that brings supplies from the States to the towns on the Arctic Ocean in August when the ice pack breaks up. The ship could always use dishwashers or laundresses, she had heard, and so she would work her way to San Francisco, where Amy, her pen pal, lived. At the end of every letter, Amy always wrote, When are you coming to San Francisco? 7 days ago, she had been on her way to the glittering white postcard city that sat on a hill among trees, those enormous plants she had never seen. She had been on her way there to see the television and carpeting in Amy's school, the glass buildings, traffic lights, and stores full of fruits, on her way to the harbor that never froze, and the Golden Gate Bridge. But primarily, she was on her way to be rid of Daniel, her terrifying husband. She kicked the sod at the thought of her marriage. Then, shaking her head to forget, she surveyed her camp. It was nice. Upon discovering the wolves, she had settled down to live near them in the hope of sharing their food, until the sun set and the stars came out to guide her. She had built a house of sod, like the summer homes of the old Eskimos. Each brick had been cut with her ulo, the half-moon-shaped woman's knife, so versatile it can trim a baby's hair, slice a tough bear, or chip an iceberg. Her house was not well built, for she had never made one before, but it was cozy inside. She had windproofed it by sealing the sod bricks with mud from the pond at her door, and she had made it beautiful by spreading her caribou ground cloth on the floor. On this she had placed her sleeping skin, a moose-hide bag lined with soft white rabbit skins. Next to her bed, she had built a low table of sod on which to put her clothes when she slept. To decorate the house, she had made 3 flowers of bird feathers and stuck them in the top of the table. Then she had built a fireplace outdoors and placed her pots beside it. The pot was empty, for she had not found even a lemming to eat. Last winter, when she had walked to school in Barrow, these mice-like rodents were so numerous they ran out from under her feet wherever she stepped. There were thousands and thousands of them, until December, when they suddenly vanished. Her teacher said that the lemmings had a chemical similar to antifreeze in their blood that kept them active all winter when other little animals were hibernating. They eat grass and multiply all winter, Mrs. Franklin had said in her sing-song voice. When there are too many, they grow nervous at the sight of each other. Somehow this shoots too much antifreeze into their bloodstream and it begins to poison them. They become restless, then crazy. They run in a frenzy until they die. My goodness. Oh, I need another yawn. Oh. Of this phenomenon, Mayax's father had simply said, "The hour of the lemming is over for 4 years." Unfortunately for Mayax, the hour of the animals that prey on the lemmings was also over. The white fox, the snowy owl, the weasel, the jagger, and the siskin had virtually disappeared. They had no food to eat and bore few or no young. Those that lived preyed on each other. With the passing of the lemmings, however, the grasses had grown high again, and the hour of the caribou was upon the land. Healthy, fat caribou cows gave birth to many calves. The caribou population increased, and this in turn increased the number of wolves who prey on the caribou. The abundance of the big deer of the north did Mayax no good, for she had not brought a gun on her trip. It had never occurred to her that she would not reach Point Hope before her food ran out. A dull pain seized her stomach. She pulled blades of grass from their sheaths and ate the sweet ends. They were not very satisfying. So she picked a handful of caribou moss, a lichen. If the deer could survive in winter on this food, why not she? She munched, decided the plant might taste better if cooked, and went to the pond for water. As she dipped her pot in, she thought about Amarok. Why had he bared his teeth at her? Because she was young and he knew she couldn't hurt him? No, she said to herself. It was because he was speaking to her. He had told her to lie down. She had even understood and obeyed him. He had talked to her not with his voice, but with his ears, eyes, and lips. And he had even commended her with a wag of his tail. She dropped her pot, scrambled up the frost heave, and stretched out on her stomach. Amarok, she called softly. I understand what you said. Can you understand me? I'm hungry, very, very hungry. Please, bring me some meat. The great wolf did not look her way, and she began to doubt her reasoning. After all, flattened ears and a tail wag were scarcely a conversation. She dropped her forehead against the lichens and rethought what had gone on between them. Then why did I lie down? She asked, lifting her head and looking at Amarok. Why did I? She called to the yawning wolves. Not one turned her way. Amarok got to his feet. My shoulder. And as he slowly arose, he seemed to fill the sky and blot out the sun. He was enormous. He could swallow her without even chewing. But he won't, she reminded herself. Wolves do not eat people. That's Gussick talk. Capugan said wolves are gentle brothers. The black puppy was looking at her and wagging his tail. Hopefully, Mayax held out a pleading hand to him. His tail wagged harder. The mother rushed to him and stood above him sternly. When he licked her cheek apologetically, she pulled back her lips from her fine white teeth. They flashed as she smiled and forgave her cub. But don't let it happen again, said Mayak sarcastically, mimicking her own elders. The mother walked toward Amarok. I should call you Martha after my stepmother, Mayax whispered, but you're much too beautiful. I shall call you Silver instead. Silver moved in a halo of light, for the sun sparkled on the guard hairs that grew out over the dense underfur, and she seemed to glow. There's Amarok. Big Wolfie. And there's Mayax, the girl, laying down. Good looking wolf. Yes, she's very pretty. Oh, I didn't even see that. There's Silver in the back. There's Silver coming up next to him. She's obviously not that much smaller. It's just she's in the background. So when things are in the background, they look smaller. Are my comments disappeared? I seem to be having issues on here. I don't know. I can see that comment. The last comment you gave was, Butterfly, your daughter, is she having the baby? Yeah, I'm always stuffy. Just a little bit. Oh. So, Silver moved in a halo of light, for the sun sparkled on the guard hairs that grew out over the dense underfur, and she seemed to glow. The reprimanded pup snapped at a crane fly and shook himself. Bits of lichen and grass spun off his fur. He reeled unsteadily, took a wider stance, and looked down at his sleeping sister. With a yap, he jumped on her and rolled her to her feet. She whined. He barked and picked up a bone. When he was sure she was watching, he ran down the slope with it. The sister tagged after him. He stopped, and she grabbed the bone too. She pulled, he pulled. Then he pulled, and she yanked. My ex could not help laughing. The puppies played with bones like Eskimo children played with leather ropes. I understand that, she said to the pups. That's tug of war. Now how do you say, I'm hungry? Amarok was pacing restlessly along the crest of the frost heave, as if something were about to happen. His eyes shot to Silver, then to the gray wolf Mayax had named Nails. These glances seemed to be a summon, for Silver and Nails glided to him, spanked the ground with their forepaws, and bit him gently under the chin. He wagged his tail furiously and took Silver's slender nose in his mouth. She crouched before him, licked his cheek, and lovingly bit his lower jaw. Amarok's tail flashed high as her mouthing charged him with vitality. He nosed her affectionately. Unlike the fox, who met his mate only in the breeding season, Amarok lived with his mate all year. Next, Nails took Amarok's jaw in his mouth, and the leader bit the top of his nose. A third adult, a small male, came slinking up. He got down on his belly before Amarok, rolled trembling to his back, and wriggled. Hello, Jello, my ex whispered, for he reminded her of the quivering Gussick dessert her mother-in-law made. Oh, I forgot about Jello. I like Jello. There's a doggy named Jello in here. Hello, Jello, my ex whispered, for he reminded her of the quivering Gussick dessert her mother-in-law made. She had seen the wolves mouth Amarok's chin twice before, and so she concluded that it was a ceremony, a sort of hail to the chief. He must indeed be their leader, for he was clearly the wealthy wolf. That is, wealthy as she had known the meaning of the word on Nunavut Island. There were old Eskimo hunters she had known in her childhood, thought the riches of life were intelligence. Oh, there the old Eskimo hunters she had known in her childhood thought the riches of life were intelligence, fearlessness, and love. A man with these gifts was rich and was a great spirit who was admired in the same way that the Gussicks admired a man with money and goods. The three adults paid tribute to Amarok until he was almost smothered with love. Then he bayed a wild note that sounded like the wind on a frozen sea. With that, the others sat around him, the puppies scattered between them. Jello hunched forward and Silver shot a fierce glance at him. Intimidated, Jello pulled his ears together and back. He drew himself down until he looked smaller than ever. Amarok wailed again, stretching his neck until his head was high above the others. They gazed at him affectionately, and it was plain to see that he was their great spirit, a royal leader who held his group together with love and wisdom. Yeah, I don't think there's any problem with MJ's comments. She's still here. Oh, wipe my nose. Any fear Mayax had of the wolves was dispelled by their affection for each other. They were friendly animals, and so devoted to Amarok that she needed only to be accepted by him to be accepted by all. She even knew how to achieve this. Bite him under the chin. But how was she going to do that? She studied the pups, hoping they had a similar way of expressing their love for him. The black puppy approached the leader, sat, then lay down and wagged his tail vigorously. He gazed up at Amarok in pure adoration, and the royal eyes softened. Well, that's what I'm doing, Mayax thought. She called to Amarok. I'm lying down, gazing at you too, but you don't look at me that way. When all the puppies were wagging his praises, Amarok yipped, hit a high note, and crooned. As his voice rose and fell, the other adults sang out, and the puppies yipped and bounced. The song ended abruptly. Amarok arose and trotted swiftly down the slope. Nails followed, and behind him ran Silver, then Jello. But Jello did not run far. Silver turned and looked him straight in the eye. She pressed her ears forward aggressively and lifted her tail. With that, Jello went back to the puppies, and the three sped away like dark birds. Mayax hunched forward on her elbows, the better to see and learn. She now knew how to be a good puppy, pay tribute to the leader, and even to be a leader, and even to be a leader by biting others on top of the nose. She also knew how to tell Jello to babysit. If only she had big ears and a tail, she could lecture and talk to them all. Flapping her hands on her head for ears, she's doing like this. She flattened her fingers to make friends, pulled them together and back to express fear, and shot them forward to display her aggression and dominance. Then she folded her arms and studied the puppies again. The black one greeted Jello by tackling his feet. Another jumped on his tail, and before he could discipline either, all 5 puppies were upon him. He rolled and tumbled with them for almost an hour. Then he ran down the slope, turned, and stopped. The pursuing pups plowed into him, tumbled, fell, and lay still. During a minute of surprised recovery, there was no action. Then the black pup flashed his tail like a semaphore signal, and they all jumped on Jello again. Mayax rolled over and laughed aloud. That's funny. They're really like kids. When she looked back, Jello's tongue was hanging from his mouth and his sides were heaving. 4 of the puppies had collapsed at his feet and were asleep. Jello flopped down too, but the black pup still looked around. He was not the least bit tired. Mayax watched him, for there was something special about him. He ran to the top of the den and barked. The smallest pup, whom Mayax called Sister, lifted her head, saw her favorite brother in action, and struggling to her feet, she followed him devotedly. While they romped, Jello took the opportunity to rest behind a clump of sedge, a moisture-loving plant of the tundra.
But hardly was he settled before a pup tracked him to his hideout and pounced on him. Jello narrowed his eyes, pressed his ears forward, and showed his teeth. I know what you're saying, she called to him. You're saying lie down. The puppy laid down, and Myax got on all fours and looked for the nearest pup to speak to. It was Sister. She whined, and when Sister turned around, she narrowed her eyes and showed her white teeth. Obediently, Sister lay down. I'm talking wolf! I'm talking wolf! Myax clapped, and tossing her head like a pup, she crawled in a happy circle. As she was coming back, she saw all 5 puppies sitting in a row watching her, their heads cocked in curiosity. Boldly, the black pup came towards her, his fat backside swinging as he trotted to the bottom of her frost heap, and barked. You are very fearless and very smart, she said. Now I know why you are special. You are wealthy and leader of the puppies. There is no doubt what you'll grow up to be. So I shall name you after my father Capugan, and I shall call you Capu for short. Capu wrinkled his brow and turned an ear to tune in wrinkled his brow and turned an ear to tune in more accurately on her voice. You don't understand, do you? Hardly had she spoken than his tail went up, his mouth opened slightly, and he fairly grinned. Elee, she gasped, you do understand, and that scares me. She perched on her heels. Jello whined an undulating note, and Capu turned back to the den. Myax imitated the call to come home. Capu looked back over his shoulder in surprise. She giggled. He wagged his tail and jumped on Jello. She clapped her hands and settled down to watch this language of jumps and tumbles, elated that she was at last breaking the wolf code. After a long time, she decided they were not talking but roughhousing, and so she started home. Later, she changed her mind. Roughhousing was very important to wolves. It occupied almost the entire night for the pups. Ely, okay, she said. I'll learn to roughhouse. Maybe then you'll accept me and feed me. She pranced, jumped, and whimpered. She growled, snarled, and rolled, but nobody came to roughhouse. Sliding back to her camp, she heard the grass swish and looked up to see Amrak and his hunters sweep around her frost heap and stop about 5 feet away. She could smell the sweet scent of their fur. The hairs on her neck rose and her eyes widened. Amarak's ears went forward aggressively, and she remembered that wide eyes meant fear to him. It was not good to show him that she was afraid. Animals attacked the fearful. She tried to narrow them, but remembered that was not right either. Narrowed eyes were mean. In desperation, she recalled that Capu had moved forward when challenged. She pranced right up to Amarak. Her heart beat furiously as she grunt whined the sound of the puppy begging adoringly for attention. Then she got down on her belly and gazed at him with fondness. The great wolf backed up and avoided her eyes. She had said something wrong, perhaps even offended him. Some slight gesture that meant nothing to her had apparently meant something to the wolf. His ears shot forward angrily, and it seemed all was lost. She wanted to get up and run, but she gathered her courage and pranced closer to him. Swiftly, she patted him under the chin. The signal went off. It sped through his body and triggered emotions of love. Amarak's ears flattened and his tail wagged in friendship. He could not react in any other way to the chin pat, for the roots of this signal lay deep in wolf history. It was inherited from generations and generations of leaders before him. As his eyes softened, the sweet odor of ambrosia rose from the gland on the top of his tail, and she was drenched lightly in wolf scent. Myax was one of the pack. All through the sunny night, she waited for Amarak to come home with food for her and the pups. When at last she saw him on the horizon, she got down on all fours and crawled to her lookout. He carried no food. Aye, she cried. The pups must be nursing. That's why there's no meat. Slumping back on her heels, she thought about this. Then she thought again. You can't be nursing, she said to Capu, and plunked her hands on her hips. Silver growls when you suckle and drives you away. Kapu twisted his ears at the sound of her voice. Okay, she called to him. Where are you getting the food that makes you so fat? He ignored her, concentrating on Silver and Nails, who were coming slowly home from the hunt. My ex went back to her pot and stuffed on the cold raw moss until her stomach felt full, if not satisfied. No, she stuffed herself on the cold raw moss until her stomach felt full, if not satisfied. Then she crawled into her cozy home in the hope that sleep would soothe her hunger. She smoothed the silver hairs of her beautiful wedding parka, then carefully took it off and rolled it up, placing it and her fur pants in a bag made of whale bladder. She tied it securely so that no moisture would dampen her clothes while she slept. This she had learned in childhood, and it was one of the old Eskimo ways that she liked, perhaps the only one. She had never violated it, even in the warm, gas-heated house in Barrow, for damp clothes could mean death in the Arctic. What comment? Everyone's comments are showing up, I think. Whose comments? Are people's comments missing? I don't know. Some of your comments disappeared. Oh, I don't know. MJ was saying that too, that she thought some of hers disappeared. Let's see, okay. For damp clothes could mean death in the Arctic. When her outer garments were put away, she took off the bright red tights her mother-in-law had bought for her at the American store in Barrow. Walking to the pond, she rinsed them and laid them in the sun. The cool air struck her naked body. She shivered and was glad that she had done one thing right. She had worn her winter clothes, not her light summer kuspuk, the women's dress. The wind gusted. Mayak scrambled through the low door and slid into her sleeping skin. The silken softness of the rabbit fur embraced her, and she pulled the hood around her face so that only her nose was exposed. The fur captured her warm breath, held it against her face, and she became her own radiant stove. In this cozy micro-world, she forgot her hunger and recalled what she already knew about wolves so that she could put it together with what she had observed. Wolves are shy, Kapugan had said, and they desert their dens if discovered by man. Yet this pack had not. Did Amarok not know that she was human? Perhaps not. She had never walked in his presence, the two-legged signal of man to wild animals. On the other hand, he must know. Kapugan had said that with one sniff a wolf knew if you were male or female, adult or child, if you were hunting or not hunting, even if you were happy or sad. She concluded that Amarok tolerated her because she was young, had no gun, and was a sad, lost child. Oh. Oh, just need a breath. She next considered Nails. Who was he? Amarok's dependable friend? That was true, yet she suspected he was even more than that. A spiritual father of the pups? Nails took orders from Amarok, but stayed close to Silver and the little wolves. He was father when their real father was busy. He was Amarok's serious partner. But Jello? Who was he? Where had he come from? Was he a pup of a previous year? Or had he joined the pack just as she had by soliciting Amarok for membership in his tribe? There was so much to learn about her family. Yeah, I can't stop to sing. We are listening to a story. But happy birthday. It's my birthday next week too, so happy birthday. But I can't stop to sing. My ex did not know how long she slept. for midnight was almost as bright as noon, and it was difficult to judge the passing of time. It did not matter, however. Time in the Arctic was the rhythm of life. The wolf pups were barking their excited yippoo that rang out. It literally says their excited yippoo. The wolf pups were barking their excited yippoo. Yippoo, yippoo. I'm just reading things as they're written, guys. That rang out the hour of the end of the hunt. The pack was coming home. With visions of caribou stew in her head, she got out of her sleeping skin and reached for her clothes. The puppies may not have been eating, but certainly Amarok would have to bring Jello some food. He had been home all night. Stepping into the sunlight, she put on her tights, danced a moment, and then put on her furs. Leaning over the pond, she saw in the glassy water the hollows of her cheeks. She was pleased, for she looked almost like the Gussick girls in the magazines and the movies, thin and gaunt, not moon-faced like an Eskimo. Her hair! She leaned closer to the tundra-looking glass. Her hair was a mess. Pressing it into place with her hands, she wished she had taken Daniel's wedding brush and comb with her. They lay unused in the corner of a table drawer in the house at Barrow. Quickly she climbed the frost heave, lay down, and looked at the wolves. There was no meat to be seen. The 3 hunters were stretched out on their sides, their bellies extended with food. Jello was gone. Of course, she said to herself, he had been relieved of his duties, and had backtracked the hunters to the kill. She winced, for she had been so certain that today she would eat. So I won't, she said to herself, and that's that. My ex knew when to stop dreaming and be practical. She slid down the heave, brushed off her parka, and faced the tundra. The plants around the pond had edible seeds, as did all of the many grasses. There were thousands of crane fly and mosquito larvae in the water, and the wildflowers were filling, if not very nourishing. But they were all small and took time to gather. She looked around for something bigger. Her black eyes were alert as several Lapland longspurs darted overhead. They might still have young in their nests. Staying on one side of the heave so the wolves would not see her two-leggedness, she skipped into the grass. The birds vanished. Their dark pointed wings were erased from the sky as if they had sensed her deadly purpose. My ex crouched down. Capugan had taught her how to hunt birds by sitting still and being patient. She crossed her feet and blended into the plants, still as stone. Presently a grass blade trembled, and my ex saw a young bird fluttering its wings as it begged to be fed. A brown lark-like parent winged down and stuffed its open beak. Another youngster begged, and the parent flew to it. Unfortunately, the second little bird was so far from the first that my ex knew they were out of the nest and impossible to catch. She shifted her attention to the snow buntings. A movement in the sky above the horizon caught her attention, and she recognized the pointed tail and black head of the jager. She knew this bird well, for it hunted the shore and tundra of Nunavut Island. A bold seabird, it resembled its close relative, the gull, but it was not a fisher. The jager preyed upon lemmings, small birds, and occasionally carrion. My ex wondered what prey it was hunting. 3 more jagers joined the first, circled close together as if over a target, and then dropped out of sight below the horizon. The wolf kill, she fairly shouted. They're sharing the wolf kill. Jumping to her feet, she lined up the spot where they had disappeared with a patch of brown lichens in the distance and ran with joy along the invisible line. When she had gone a quarter of a mile, she stopped and looked back. The endless tundra rolled around her, and she could not tell which frost heave was which. "Oh, no!" she cried. She turned around and laboriously searched out the plants crushed by her feet. Near a pool, she lost all sight of her steps, and then with relief she recognized an empty lemming nest, a round ball of grass that she had kicked open. She pounced on it, saw a flower she had trampled, and ran up the heave to it. From the top, she looked across the distance to her own precious house. She reminded herself not to be so careless again. "One can get lost out here," she said aloud. Mayax flopped down in the grass to rest. Her hand touched a patch of Arctic peas. They were tiny but numerous. She took off her boot and then her sock and filled its toe with the vegetables. When all were harvested, she swung the sock over her shoulder and, striding joyously, rounded her pond and plunked the peas in her pot. She rolled them around with her fingers and they rattled musically. She rolled them again and made up words to fit their rhythm. "Peas that go tink, peas that go tot, peas that never grow outside my pot." The puppies yapped and Silver ran out across the tundra. She leaped with grace, her fur gleaming like metal. Then she swept into a dip in the landscape and vanished. Up from the horizon rose the Jaggers, announcing that Silver had gone to the kill. Clutching the cooking pot to her breast, Mayax excitedly waited to see her bring back meat for the pups. The Jaggers circled, the long spurs tumbled on their wings, and at last Silver came home. Her mouth was empty. "I just don't understand," she said to the pups. "What is keeping you alive?" Putting down her pot, she went to her lookout to try to solve the riddle. I don't know if I'm going to sleep. Never mind. Silver came up the long slope, gave the grunt whine that summoned the pups, and Kapoo ran to meet her. She pulled back her lips in a smile and nosed him affectionately. Then Kapoo stuck his nose in the corner of her mouth. Silver arched her back, her neck rippled, and she choked up a big mound of meat. Kapoo set upon it with a snarl. "So that's it," said Mayax. "The meat is in the belly basket. Now what do I do?" Kapoo let Sister share the meal with him, but not Zing, Zat, and Zit, as Mayax had dubbed the three tawny pups, who had little personality as yet. Zing rushed over to the resting Silver, all cuddled up against her. He rammed his nose against her teats, and taking one in his mouth, ravenously nursed. Silver tolerated this for a moment, and then growled. He did not let go, and she snapped at him. He pulled away, but when she stretched out, he dove back into her belly fur again. With a loud bark, she rolled onto her stomach and cut off her milk from him. Zing got up, walked over to Amarok, and stuck his nose in the corner of his mouth. Amarok regurgitated food. The secret of the fat pups was out. They were being weaned from mother's milk to well-chewed and partially digested food. They might eat food from the belly basket for weeks before they were brought chunks of meat that Mayax could share, and so she went out into the grasses again to look for buntings. Soon Silver and Nails trotted off in the direction of the kill. Having fed the puppies, they were now feeding themselves. Mayax cautiously peered around the heave. Jello had not gone with them. Yet he had been to the kill. He would have food in his belly basket. When the Jaggers arose into the air, she picked up the pot and climbed once again to the top of her frost heave. Getting to her hands and knees, she gave the grunt whine call. "Look at me, I'm nice," it said. Jello strode towards her. So pushed around was he by Silver, so respectful of Amarok and even Nails, that he was excited by a voice more humble than his own. He even lifted his tail and head higher than Mayax had ever seen him do, and acting like the boss, acting like the boss wolf, he loped up her frost heave. Curious, Kapoo trotted behind. As Mayak scurried to meet Jello, he hesitated, growled softly, and urinated. Don't be scared, she said, and whimpered. He circled closer. Quickly rising to her knees, grunting the note of friendship, she slipped her hand over his head and clasped the top of his nose firmly in his fingers. I'm boss, she said, as his tail and head went down in deference to the symbol of leadership. She started to slip her hand into the corner of his mouth, but he jerked away. Then Kapoo, as if he understood what Mayax wanted, swept up to Jello and nuzzled his mouth. Jello heaved, opened his jaws, and deposited food on the ground. I'll live, Mayax cried jubilantly, as Jello turned, put his tail between his legs, and raced back to the other pups. Argue. Oh my goodness. You guys are making everything dirty. This is about wolves, y'all. Oh my god. I gotta listen to myself when I always tell you, Butterfly, not to read the hidden comments, but oh my. Making something so innocent. It's an innocent story of survival and cute puppies. Jello turned, put his tail between his legs, and raced back to the other pups. Kapoo sat down and watched with a wrinkled forehead as she scooped the meat into the pot. When she had retrieved every morsel, she gently closed her lips on the bridge of his nose. His tail wagged respectfully, and he gazed softly into her eyes. Kapoo, she whispered, we Eskimos have joking partners, people to have fun with, and serious partners, people to work and think with. You and I are both. We are joking, serious partners. He wagged his tail excitedly and blinked. And that's the best of all. She reached out to hug him, for his eyes were mellow and his fuzz irresistible, but he was like water and slipped through her hands. On two knees and one hand, holding up the pot with the other, Mayax hobbled towards her camp. Kapoo bit her heel softly, and she glanced over her shoulder. His head was cocked and his tail swished slowly. What are you saying now? She asked. He gave the grunt whine for attention. Of course, she was his big sister, and he wanted to play. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a mitten, and before she could flash it in front of his nose, he had leapt, caught it, and was pulling and shaking her whole arm and torso with incredible strength. Mayax let go, lest she spill her meat, and Kapoo rolled head over heels into the lichens. Taking a firm grip on the mitten, he flattened his ears in a spirited fellowship, dashed down the slope and up to his den. There he turned to see if she was following. Bring back my mitten, she called. I need it. He flashed the wolf smile of apology, shook the mitten, and romped into the midst of his other brothers. Kapoo scratched a wide swath on the ground with his hind feet. The three tawny pups sniffed the mark, and Zit sat down before it. Bold Kapoo had written his signature, and it was deep and impressive. Mayax wondered if the mitten victory was responsible. It was quite a trophy to win. Placing her pot by the fireplace, she walked out on the tundra and gathered dry grass and lichens in her sock, for there was, of course, no wood to burn. Although caribou droppings were better fuel, she was too fearful of getting lost to hunt them. Piling the grass and lichens in the center of the stone, she went into her house, took a small cookie tin from her pack, and removed one precious match. Then she lit the tinder. The grass burst into flame, and the lichens smoldered slowly, giving her time to dig the peat that the dead grasses had laid down for thousands and thousands of years. Gradually, the peat glowed, the water boiled, and an hour later, Mayax had a pot of caribou stew. Oh, that's fine. I think Butterfly took care of it, so Butterfly took care of it. That was my fault for I read the deleted comments. I always tell Butterfly not to read the deleted comments, but then I do the same thing. At last, she said, on it floated great chunks of golden grease, more delicious than the butter from the Gussick store. She put a savory bite in her mouth, sucked the juices, then chewed a long time before she swallowed. She must not eat too fast or too much. Capoogin had said that an old lady, rescued from the snow after weeks of starvation, so stuffed herself that she died the next day. Munching another bite, she went out to the grass clump to check on buntings, and a long time later returned to eat 2 more chunks of caribou. The rest, though she longed for it, she stored inside her house. Then she patted her stomach and told it to wait. For the first time in days, she could think of something other than food. Her mind turned to the problem of which direction was north, and in which direction lay the town of Point Hope. The dips and heaves of the tundra spread out all around her and still looked the same in every direction. Oh, ho, she said out loud. More lichens grow on one side of the forest heaves than on the other. She pondered this, as well as the oblong shape of her pond, which was caused by the flow of the ice as it moved with the wind. But did the wind come down from the north or out of the west on the north slope of Alaska? She did not know. Next, she noted that the grasses grew in different spots than the mosses, and the more she studied, the more the face of the tundra emerged, a face that could tell her which way was north, if she had listened more carefully to Capoogin. Yeah, butterfly's great. We love our butterfly. Her legs began to buckle and her body swayed. She crumpled to her knees, for the food was making her both dizzy and sleepy. She staggered into her fur-carpeted house and lay down. Myax's eyelids fluttered. The black lashes parted, then framed her wide eyes like ferns around a pool. She had eaten, slept for many hours, and the dull, tired feeling of starvation was gone. She felt bright and very much alive. Rolling to her stomach, she propped herself on her elbows and reached into her pot to eat. She ate a lot. The food in the pot lowered drastically. When but 2 meals remained, she made up her mind to tell Amarok she wanted a whole shank of caribou. Wolves did bring food to their dens. Capoogin had seen them walk long miles in the spring, with legs and ribs for the mothers who stayed in the ground with their pups for almost 10 days after birth. Well, she had no puppies to induce Amarok to feed her, so she pondered again. Capoogin had once told her of a wolf who was wounded by the hoofs of a caribou. He limped to a rock cave and lay down to recover. Every night his leader trotted over the snow, bringing him meat until he was well and could rejoin the pack. Myax did not want to suffer a wound, but it seemed to her that in order to be fed by wolves, one had to be helpless. If that's the case, she said to herself, I should be buried in food. I'm helpless enough. I cannot fell a caribou or catch a bird. I'm lost besides. She thrust her head out the door. Amarok, I'm helpless, she cried. The chilly air tingled her nose, and she noticed that the cotton grasses by the pond were seeding out into white puffs. This was worrisome, for they marked the coming of autumn, the snows, and the whiteouts. Whiteouts could be dangerous. When the cotton grass heads were gone, the winds would lift the snow from the ground to the air, and she would not be able to see her feet. She would be imprisoned wherever she stood, maybe for days, maybe till death. Amarok howled the long note to assemble. Silver and Nails barked a grief, coming, and it was the beginning of a new day for Myax and the wolves. Although the clocks in Barrow would say it was time to get ready for bed, she was getting up, for she was on wolf time. Since there was no darkness to hamper her vision, night was as good a time to work as day, and much better if you were a wolf girl. Rehearsing a wolf girl, it's like a horse girl. Since there was no darkness to hamper her vision, Night was as good a time to work as day, and much better if you were a wolf girl. Rehearsing whimpers and groveling positions as she climbed to her lookout, she got ready to tell Amarok how helpless she was in his own language. He was awake, lying on his side, watching Sister's paw twitch as she slept. He got up and licked the restless sleeper as if to say, "All is well." The paw relaxed. Mayax whimpered and twisted her head appealingly. Amarok shot her a glance and wagged his tail, as if she had said, "Hello," not "I'm helpless." Suddenly, his head lifted, his ears went up, and Amarok sniffed the wind. Mayak sniffed the wind and smelled nothing. Although Amarok was on his feet now, electric with the airborne message, he snapped his hunters to attention and led them down the slope and off across the tundra. Jello stayed home with the pups. The pack moved in single file almost to the horizon, then swerved and came back. Shading her eyes, Mayax finally saw what the wind had told Amarok. A herd of caribou was passing through. She held her breath as the hunter sped towards a large buck. The animal opened his stride and gracefully gained ground. He could so easily outrun the wolves that Amarok let him go and trotted towards another. This one, too, outdistanced the pack, and Amarok swerved and tested another. Just as Mayax was wondering how the wolves ever caught anything, Amarok put on full speed and bore down on a third. This animal could not outrun him, and when Amarok attacked, he turned and struck with his powerful hooves. Like a bouncing ball, the leader sprang away. Nails and silver fanned out to either side of the beast, then veered and closed in. The caribou bellowed, pressed back his ears, zigzagged over a frost heave, and disappeared from sight. "They're chasing the weakest," Mayak said in astonishment. "It's just like Capogan said. Wolves take the old and sick." She looked from the empty tundra to the busy den site. Capu was staring at her, his eyes narrowed, his ears thrown forward aggressively. "Now why are you so hostile?" she asked, then looked at her feet and legs. "Eli, Eli!" She dropped to all fours and smiled apologetically. "Ai, Capu, you've never seen a man in all your life. What is it that tells you to beware? Some spirit of your ancestors that still dwells in your body?" She gave the grunt whine, and Capu pressed down his ears, snatched up a bone, and brought it over to her. She grabbed it. He tugged, she pulled. He growled, she giggled, and Jello called Capu home. He cocked an ear, rolled his eyes, and ignored the babysitter. Yeah, we don't tolerate that kind of language. We don't do that word here. We don't do that word here. If you want to come back tomorrow and try again with better language, that's fine, but we don't do that here. Let's see. Okay, he cocked an ear, rolled his eyes, and ignored the babysitter. "You're naughty," she said, and covered a grin with her hand. "Martha would scold me for that." Capu dropped the bone. She leaned down, picked it up in her teeth, and tried to run on all fours. She had barely begun to move away when Capu leaped on her back and took her bare neck in his teeth. She started to scream, checked herself, and, closing her eyes, waited for the teeth to pierce her skin. They did not even bruise, so controlled was this grip that said, "Drop the bone." She let it go, and in one swish, Capu leaped to the ground and snatched it. As she started after him, something struck her boot, and she looked around to see Zit, Zat, and Sister at her heels. Zing charged up the knoll, hit her arm with great force, and knocked her to the ground. She growled, flashed her teeth, and narrowed her eyes. Capu dropped the bone and lay down. Zing backed up, and for a moment not a puppy moved. "Phew," she smiled. "That did it." Too late, she remembered that such a smile was an apology, a sort of, I didn't mean it. And before she could growl, all 5 little wolves jumped on her again. Stop! She was so angry. They sensed it and backed away. Shoo! Go! She waved her arm above her head, and the threatening pose spoke louder than all her words. Drooping their tails, glancing wearily at her, they trotted away. All but Kapoo. He licked her cheek. Dear Kapoo. She was about to stroke his head when he picked up the bone and carried it back to the den. But he was not done with play. He never was. Kapoo was tireless. Diving into a tunnel, he came out on the other side and landed on Jello's tail. When Mayak saw this, she sat back on her heels. Open-ended tunnels reminded her of something. In the spring, wolf packs stay at a nursery den. Wolf packs stay at a nursery den where the pups are born, deep in the earth at the end of long tunnels. When the pups are about 6 weeks old and big enough to walk and run, the leaders move the entire group to a summer den. These are mere shelters for the pups and are open at 2 ends. For a few weeks, the packs stay hidden at this den. Then they leave and take up the nomadic winter life of the wolf. The cold chill of fear ran up Mayak's spine. The wolves would soon depart. Then what would she do? She could not follow them. They often ran 50 miles in a night and slept in different spots each day. Her hands trembled, and she pressed them together to make them stop. For Kapugin had taught her that fear can so cripple a person that he cannot think or act. Already she was too scared to crawl. Change your ways when fear seizes, he had said, for it usually means you are doing something wrong. She knew what it was. She should not depend upon the wolves for survival. She must go on her own. Instantly she felt relieved. Her legs moved, her hands stopped shaking, and she remembered that when Kapugin was a boy, he had told her he had made snares of rawhide and caught little birds. Buntings beware, she shouted and slid down to her camp. Stepping out of her pants, she slipped off her tights and cut a swath of cloth from the hip with her ulo. She tore the cloth into small strips, then ate some stew and started off to hunt birds. Every so often, she tied a bit of red cloth to a clump of grass or around a conspicuous stone. If she was going to hunt in this confusing land, she must leave a trail to lead her home. She could not smell her way back as the wolves did. As she tied the first piece of cloth to a bent sedge, she looked down on a small pile of droppings. Elise, she said, a bird roost. Someone sleeps here every night. Quickly she took the thongs from her boots, made a noose, and placed it under the sedge. Holding the pole rope, she moved back as far as she could and lay down to await the return of the bird. The sun slid slowly down the sky, hung still for a moment, and then started up again. It was midnight. A flock of swift-flying Arctic terns darted overhead, and one by one dropped into the grasses. Ruddy turnstones called sleepily from their scattered roosts, and sandpipers whistled. The creatures of the tundra were going to sleep, as they did also at noon in the constant daylight. Each called from his roost, all but the little bird of the sedge. It had not come back. A bird chirped 3 feet from her face, and Mayax rolled her eyes to the left. A bunting on a grass blade tucked its bill into the feathers on its back, fluffed, and went to sleep. Where, she asked, was the bird of the sedge? Had it been killed by a fox or a weasel? She was about to get to her feet and hunt elsewhere, but she remembered that Kapugin never gave up. Sometimes he would stand motionless for 5 hours at a steel-breathing hole in the ice, waiting for a seal to come up for a breath. She must wait too. The sun moved on around the sky, and when it was directly behind her, the sleep bunting lifted its head and chirped. It hopped to a higher blade of grass, preened and sang its morning song. The sleep was over. Her bird had not come back. Suddenly a shadow passed. A snowy owl, white wings folded in a plummeting dive, threw out a snowy owl, white wings folded in a plummeting dive, threw out his feathered feet and struck the little gray bunting. The owl bounced up and came down almost on Mayax's outstretched hand. The bird caught in its foot. Her first instinct was to pounce on the owl, but she instantly thought better of that. Even if she could catch him, she would have his powerful claws and beak to contend with, and she knew what damage they could do. Besides, she had a better idea: to lie still and watch where he flew. Perhaps he had owlets in the nest, for these little birds took almost 6 weeks to get on their wings. If there were owlets, there would also be food. Lots of it, for the male owls are constantly bringing food to the young. Once she had a Once she had counted 80 lemmings piled at the nest of a snowy owl. So close was the ookpik, the white owl of the north, that she could. Julie's here. We need Julie. Look at owls. The white owl of the north, Julie's boyfriend, that she could see the clove markings on its wings and the dense white forehead that covered its legs and feet. His large yellow eyes were pixie-ish, and he looked like a funny little Eskimo in a white parka. And mucklucks. Oh, see, this is where I got Lucky's name. The mucklucks. They're little winter boots. That's Lucky's name. Lucky's full name is Mucklucks. His large yellow eyes were pixie-ish, and he looked like a funny little Eskimo in white parka and mucklucks. The wind stirred the wolverine trim on Mayax's hood, and the owl turned his gleaming eyes upon her. She tried not to blink and belie the life in her stone-still body, but he was suspicious. He turned his head almost upside down to get a more acute focus on her. Then, unwinding swiftly, he lifted his body and sped off. His wings arced deeply as he steered into the wind and shot like a bullet towards the sun. As Mayax rolled to a sitting position, the owl scooped his wings up, braked, and dropped onto an exceptionally large frost heave. He left the bird and flew out over the tundra, screaming the demonic call of the hunting ookpik. That means owl. Mayax tied another red patch on the sedge, rounded a boggy pond, and climbed the heave where the owl lived. There lay an almost dead owlet, its big beak resting on the edge of the stone-lined nest. It lifted its head, laboriously hissed, and collapsed. The owlet was starving, for there was only the bunting, when there should have been dozens of lemmings. It would not live in this time of no lemmings. She picked up the bunting and owlet, regretting that she had found a provider only to lose him again. The male owl would not bring food to an empty nest. Collecting her red markers as she walked home, oh, excuse me. Collecting her red markers as she walked home, she kicked open old lemming nests in the hope of finding baby weasels. These small relatives of the mink, with their valuable fur that turns white in the winter, enter lemming nests and kill and eat the young. Then they move into the round, grassy structures to give birth to their own young. Although Mayax kicked 7 nests, there were no weasels, for there were no lemmings to eat. When in sight of her house, she took a shortcut and came upon a pile of old caribou droppings, fuel for her fire. Gleefully, she stuffed her pockets, tied a marker at the site for later use, and skipped home, dreaming of owlet stew. She plucked the birds, laid them on the ground, and skillfully cut them open with her ulo. Lifting out the warm viscera, she tipped back her head and popped them into her mouth. They were delicious, the nuts and candy of the Arctic. She had forgotten how good they tasted. They were rich in vitamins and minerals, and her starving body welcomed them. Treats over, she sliced her birds into delicate strips and simmered them slowly and not too long. Chicken of the North. Mayax gave a toast to the birds Then she drank the rich juices and popped the tender meat in her mouth. Had she been a boy, this day would be one to celebrate. When a boy caught his first bird in Nunavut, he was supposed to fast for a day, then celebrate the feast of the bird. When he killed his first seal, his mother took off her rings, for he was a man, and this was her way of bragging without saying a word. Silly, she said to herself, but nevertheless she sang Capugin's song of the bird feast. Tournay it, spirit of the bird, fly into my body and bring me the power of the sun. Capu yapped to say that the hunters were coming home, and Mayax washed out her pot and went to her lookout to tell them good night. Amarok and Jello were facing each other, ruffs up, ready to fight. Before Jello could attack, Amarok lifted his head, and Jello bowed before him. The dispute was over. No blood was shed. The difference had been settled with the pose of leadership. Mayax wondered what had happened to put them at odds with each other. Whatever the problem, Jello had surrendered. He was on his back, flashing the white fur on his belly that signaled, "I give up!" And no one, not even the pups, could strike him. "The white flag of surrender," she murmured. Jello lost. Amarok walked away gracefully. He was not done with what he had to say, however. With a dash, he picked up her mitten and tore it up to shreds, then rolled in its many pieces and stood up. Nails, Silver, and the pup sniffed him and wagged their tails in a great excitement. Then Amarok narrowed his eyes and glanced her way. With a chill, she realized he was going to attack. She flattened herself like an obedient pup as he glided down his slope and up hers. With her breath quickening, her heart raced. When Amarok was but 5 feet away and she could see each hair on his long, fine nose, he gave the grunt whine. He was calling her. Cautiously, she crawled towards him. He wagged his tail and led her down the hill, through the sedges and up the long slope to the wolf den. Patiently adjusting his stride to her clumsy crawl, he brought her home to the pack. Perhaps against Jello's will, she would never know. At the den site, he promptly ignored her and went to his bed, a dish-like scoop in the soil on the highest point. Circling 3 or 4 times, scratching the earth to prepare it for sleep, he lay down. Mayax glanced out of the corner of her eyes to see Nails preparing his bed also, with scratches and turns. Silver was already in her scoop, Silver was already in her scoop, snapping at the nursing zing. Jello was off by himself. Now it was Mayax's turn to say she was home. Patting the ground, circling first to the left and then to the right, she lay down and pulled her knees up to her chin. She closed her eyes, but not completely. Through her lashes, she peeked at Amarok. Hi. Hi, Taylor. Welcome back in. Through her lashes, she peeked at Amarok for reassurance, just as she had seen the other wolves do. The wind played across his black ruff, and his ears twitched from time to time as he listened to the birds and the winds in his sleep. All was well with the world, and apparently with her, for Amarok rested in peace. But Mayax could not sleep. The sun reached its apogee and started down the blue sky of early afternoon. The elegant Arctic terns cut swirls in the sky. A spider crept under a stone, and the snow buntings flitted and called. From some distant spot a loon cried. Then the pale green of the evening was upon the land, and Mayax closed her eyes. She awoke with a start a short time later and looked about in puzzlement. The sky vaulted above her. A grass blade tickled her face, and she remembered where she was, up on the frost heave with the wolf pack. Breathing deeply to quell a sense of uneasiness, she finally relaxed, unrolled, and sat up. Capu was curled against her leg. His feet were flipping, and he yipped as if challenging some wolf badman in his dreams. Softly she stroked his fur. All is well, she whispered, and his paws stopped moving. He sighed and dreamed on peacefully. She glanced around. All of the wolves were asleep, although they were usually hunting when the sky was lime green. Perhaps they knew something she didn't know. Sniffing and turning her head, she saw nothing different from any other evening. Then, in the distance, a thick wall of fog arose. It blotted out the horizon, the far dips and heaves, the grasses, the pond, and finally her own frost heave. The fog streamed up the wolf slope and enveloped the members of the pack one by one until only Kapoo was visible. Fogs were part of the Arctic summer, rolling in from the sea for only an hour or for many days. But Mayax had never given them much thought. Now she remembers that when the fog rolled over Barrow, airplanes were grounded, ships and boats had to be anchored, and even the two jeeps in town sat where they had stopped in the fog. She also remembered that people were prisoners of the fog too. They could not see to hunt. Now, if the wolves did not bring her some meat, she might not eat for days. She could resort to the belly basket again, but Jello was jumpy, and she doubted if she had enough courage to put her hands in the mouths of the others. Perhaps Kapoo would share his meals with her? Kapoo? He sighed and pushed tighter against her. The whiskers that protected his sensitive nose and warned him of objects nearby twitched as her breath touched them. His lips curled up. Whatever he was dreaming about now must be funny, she thought. She hoped so, for her wide-awake dream was hardly amusing. It was desperate. Blubber makes good candle. Also can be used as oil. Yes, I think they mentioned that in here. They use whale blubber and stuff to cook. Ooh, blubber. Blubber, blubber. Her wide-awake dream was hardly amusing. It was desperate. She was looking at Silver, stretched not far away in a thin spot of fog. Zing, the incorrigible Zing, was nursing again. Silver growled. The pup rolled to his back, paws outstretched like an upside-down chair. Then Sister moved out of the fog. She snuggled up to her mother, suckled 2 or 3 times, more for comfort than food, and fell back to sleep. This brief suckling of the pups had started Silver's milk flowing. Mayax stared at this unexpected source of food. She inched forward on her stomach and elbows until she was close to the mother. Mayax had drunk the milk of other wild animals on Nunavut Island, and each time had found it sweet and good. True, the walrus and musk oxen had been milked by her father, but if he had done it, why couldn't she? Slipping her hand beneath a nipple, she caught several drops, keeping her eyes on Silver to discern her mood. Slowly Mayax brought the milk to her mouth, lapped, and found it as rich as butter. She reached out again, but as she did so, Silver closed her jaws on Mayax's shoulder and held her immobile. She stifled a scream. Suddenly Amarok appeared and lifted his head. Silver let go. Mayax rubbed her shoulder and crept back to Kapoo. He was awake, peering up at her, his head on his paws. When their eyes met, he flipped one ear humorously, and Mayax sensed he had been through this too. Guess I'm weaned, she said. He wagged his tail. The fog thickened and, like an eraser on a blackboard, wiped out Amarok and Silver and the tip of Kapoo's tail. She cuddled closer to Kapoo, wondering if Amarok would hunt tonight. After a long time, she decided he would not. His family was content and well fed. Not she, however. 2 drops of milk were scarcely life-sustaining. She patted Kapoo, crawled off in the fog, and stood up when she thought she was safely out of sight. Amarok snarled. She dropped to her knees. His tail beat the ground, and she gasped. I know you can't see me, she called, so how do you know what I'm doing? Can you hear me, stand up? His tail beat again, and she scrambled to her house, awed by the sensitivity of Amarok. He knew about fogs and the sneaky ways of human beings. The sedges around her pond were the sedges around her pond were visible if she crawled, and so on hands and knees she rounded the bank, picking seeds, digging up nut-like roots of the sedges, and snatching cranefly larvae from the water. As she crept, she ate. After what seemed like hours of constant foraging, she was still hungry, but not starving. She came back to her house in a fog so thick she could almost hold it in her hands. For long hours she was suspended between sleep and wakefulness. She listened to the birds call to keep in touch with each other in the fog. Like herself, they could not smell their food, they needed to see. As time dragged on, she sang to pass the hours. At first, she invented rhymes about the tundra and sang them to tunes she had learned in school. When she tired of these melodies, she improvised on the songs of her childhood. They were better suited to improvisation, for they had been invented for just this purpose, to pass the hours in creative fun while the weather closed in. She sang about the wolves, her house, and the little feather flower on her table, and when she had no more to say, she crawled to her door and looked out. The fog was somewhat lighter. She could see the empty pot by her fireplace, and low overhead, a few of birds in the sky. Then an airplane droned in the distance, grew louder, then fainter, then louder again. The pilot was circling, waiting to see if the weather might suddenly clear so he could land. The same thing had happened to her when she was flown from Nunavut to Barrow. As their plane came over the town, a dense fog rolled in and the pilot had circled for almost an hour. If we cannot land on this turn, he had finally announced over the intercom, we will head straight back to Fairbanks. But suddenly the fog had cleared and they had landed in Barrow. The sound of the plane grew louder. Through the thinning fog, she saw a commercial plane that flew from Fairbanks to Barrow and back. Her heart pounded. If the pilot could see her, he might send help. She ran out to wave, but the fog had swirled in again and she could barely see her hand. The engines accelerated and the plane sped off in what must be the direction of Fairbanks. She listened to the sound and, bending down, drew a line in the soil in the direction that it had gone. That way should be Fairbanks, she said. At least I know that much. Picking up pebbles, she pounded them into the line to make it more permanent and then stood up. That way, she said, pointing to the opposite direction, is the coast and Point Hope. Amarok howled, nails barked, then Amarok slid into a musical crescendo that Silver joined in. Their voices undulated as each harmonized with the other. Jello's windy voice barked out, and like the beat of the drums, the five pups whooped and yipped. Mayax rubbed her chin. Something was different about this hunt song. It was eerie and restless. It spoke of things she did not understand, and she was frightened. The fog cleared again, and she saw Amrok, his hunters, and the pups running across the tundra. Even Jello was with them. Were they leaving her? Was this their day to take up the wandering life of the wolves? Let's see, hold on. Was this their day to take up the wandering life of the wolves? Was she now on her own? Picking up her red markers, she crawled around her frost heave and frantically gathered the leafy plants that the caribou eat. She stuffed mushrooms like fungi in her pockets and bits of reindeer moss. She could no longer afford to pass up anything that might be edible. As she worked on her hands and knees, she felt a rhythmical beat, like the rumble of Eskimo drums. Pressing her ears to the ground, she heard the vibration of many feet. A herd of caribou was not far away. The fog thinned and Kapu came into view. As alert as an eagle, He was sniffing the wind and wagging his tail as if reading some amusing wolf story. She sniffed too, but for her the pages were blank. The vibrations in the earth grew stronger. Mayax drew back as out of the way the fog came, as out of the fog, sorry, Mayax drew back as out of the fog came a huge caribou, running her way. His head was out straight and his eyes rolled wildly. At his neck, leaping with the power of an ocean wave, was Amarok. Nails was diving in and out under his legs, and at his flank dashed Silver. Mayax held her breath, wondering whether to run or dodge. Then Amarok jumped, floated in the air for an instant, and sank his teeth into the shoulder of the beast. He hung on while Silver attacked from the side. Then he dropped to the ground as the bull bellowed. The fog closed in briefly, and when it thinned, the caribou was poised above Amarok, his cleaver-like hooves aimed at his head. There was a low grunt, a flash of hooves, and the huge feet cut uselessly into the sod, for Amarok had vaulted into the air again and had sunk his teeth into the animal's back. Snarling, using the weight of his body as a tool, he rode the circling and stumbling beast. Silver leapt in the front of the bull, trying to trip him or slow him down. Nails had a grip on one hind leg. The caribou bucked, writhed, and then dropped to his knees. His antlers pierced the ground. He bellowed and fell. He was dying. His eyes glazed with the pain-killing drug of shock. Yet his muscles still flexed. His hoofs flailed at the three who were ending his hunt. His hoofs flailed at the three who were ending the hunt with slashes and bloodletting bites. It's the wolves going after the caribou. There's a caribou, and then all the wolves kind of chasing and trying to take him down. How much more do I have here? I feel like a good place to leave off because I'm getting tired. We're like almost at, but I don't think I can get that far. I think we're going to call it here. We're on page 58 because I'm getting too tired. I'm going to have to get up in the morning, so the wolves are taking down a caribou right now. Looked like she was afraid that they were gonna take off on her, because the wolves travel and are like nomads during the winter time. So she was afraid that they were gonna go travel on her and leave her alone. But they came back hunting caribou, so they just showed back up hunting a bunch of caribou. So she's probably happy to see them again. But we will find out what happens as we go. So it's just a fun little story. Lots of little puppies running and jumping and playing. But I'm going to head off for tonight because I'm getting tired. I think my reading was starting to go downhill. I was starting to trip over my words. So I hope everyone has a good night. And we can pick up the story in another couple of days. I am busy tomorrow. I think I have some things to do, but if I have time to read, I will. If not, I might be busy. So everyone have a good night. I know it's kind of like there's not really chapters in that book. They're like parts, so it's hard to find a good place to leave off. But just kind of was starting to get tired, so I just picked like the end of a chapter or the end of a section. I'm like, hey, they're just hunting caribou. We can go head off. Everybody have a good night. I hope you guys are enjoying the story. Do you guys like it so far? How do you guys like it so far? I like Kapoo. You like it? I like Kapoo, the little puppy. Oh, and my throat's starting to hurt again. Oh, I'm glad you like it. And I love, like, all that learning about, like, the different... Yeah, it gets worse when I get tired. When I get tired and everything just kind of swells. But yeah, I like learning about, like, the Eskimo stuff and hearing, like, the different Eskimo words. And then, yeah, we heard Lucky's name, Mr. Mucklucks. Stratty was sitting behind me the whole time, but I don't think you could see him. Hi. Oh, shut my light. There we go. Hey. Stratty loves story time. Stratty, do you like story time? You always sit with me when I do story time. Oh. You grabbing my arm? He's kneading my arm. You're so sweet. He's the sweetest boy. His little paw stretching and clamping. He's going like, Yeah, is that what you're doing? With your paw? You doing that with your paw? Sweet boy. Sweet, sweet boy. We'll just take a minute with Stratty. Stratty, say goodnight to everybody. Yeah. The best boy. The best boy. My throat's also starting to hurt, but like just on one side, it feels more like a lymph node than my throat. It's like that lymph node between my throat and my ear again. Hey. MJ said, I love how he looks like a wise old man cat. Doesn't he? He's such a wise old man. Sweet old little gentleman. He really is such a wise old man. You're such a wise old man. You're going to be 11 this year, Stratty. Are you going to be 11 next month? Yeah? Are you going to be 11? Are you going to be 11? He does still have kitten energy sometimes. Yeah, he does. When I don't feel good, he comes and sleeps with me. And he likes to sit on the couch with me here. He likes to sit on the couch with me. He doesn't usually get in bed with me unless I'm not feeling good. He's definitely like an emotional support cat. If I'm really sick or not feeling good or like unhappy and sad, then he comes and sits with me and lays in bed with me. Oh, my baby boy. My baby boy. I love you. I don't know. I'm trying to get my friend to come visit me, but I'm not trying very hard because I don't want to like pressure someone into making a big drive all the way just to see me. So I won't probably be doing much. I don't do much for my birthday. So just watching Scream 7 and chilling with my animals at home. after that. Maybe have some sort of dinner. Sometimes my family gets like Chinese food or something. But my mom's on like a keto diet, so we're not really eating out a lot. Aw. It's your birthday. I'd drive 8 hours to see you if I drove. Yeah, my friend said she might come up. It's just she's in the middle of moving and stuff too. But we'll see. This lazy eye. I got this lazy eye that's like drifting. Drifting lazy eye. My stratty. My stratty. But yeah. So, I don't know. Might see a friend. Otherwise just gonna watch Scream 7 and then come home and chill with the aminals. Have dinner. Lazy eyes are fun. You can see me coming from the side. Mine isn't bad. It's just it starts to drift just like a little bit. And get like it's not like it just gets like one eye starts closing. See, this one kind of closes and droop. It gets like droopy. One of them kind of droops closed more than the other. I get a droopy eye. My eyes are droopy to begin with, so. Yes, I just wanted to snuggle my kitty for a minute. I just wanted to snuggle my kitty. I think you could watch me snuggle the kitty. Some guy came in here earlier wanting to watch me sleep, so hey. Hey, Mr. Man, if you want to watch me sleep, I'll just go sleep right here. MJ said, I want to snuggle the kitty. He's so chill. Yes, he is. He's a good boy. He's purring too. He has a really soft purr, so you can't really hear it that well, but he has a very quiet purr. He has a quiet purr. Alright. But yeah, we're going to bed. Good night. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. Goodbye, Stratty. Bye. Nighty-night.